Hi, everyone. My name is Yvonne Diaz. I'm a co-founder of Oncogene Cancer Research, and I'm really pleased to be joined again with Duncan Edmonstone, who's living with stage 4 ALK-positive lung cancer here in the UK. Welcome back, Duncan.
Thank you, Yvonne.
So since your diagnosis 6 years ago with ALK-positive lung cancer, you have obviously done so much already. You returned back to work, you decided to take some early retirement, and then now you've really gotten involved in so many different areas of advocacy, and you've been doing some really important work. I wanted to go straight into the pilot that you were helping to initiate here in the UK. Can you tell us a little bit more about that one first?
Sure, yeah. Advocacy comes in many shapes and forms. I think part of the thing about it is to find your niche, find the bit where you can add some value and make a difference. And I've really enjoyed working with an organisation around Manchester in the UK called the Greater Manchester Cancer Alliance. Now, there's a whole host of these cancer alliances across England, and they basically bring together primary and secondary care clinicians, doctors and nurses. They bring together pharmacists, local charities, local government organisations, and everything in between to figure out how do we best treat cancer in our region. So Greater Manchester Cancer Alliance has been running programs for a while around early diagnosis of lung cancer. And as part of that, one of the pilots that's been ongoing here, and I've been involved in as a patient representative in this, is something called self-referral chest X-rays. And what this really is it's a way for an individual in the Greater Manchester area to go and get a chest X-ray without needing to see a clinician. It would typically something like that in the UK. There's a gatekeeper for all that sort of thing, which is typically a general practitioner, which is a family doctor. They would refer on for getting a chest X-ray. This allows you to short circuit that and go straight to a radiology department at a hospital. Rock up, literally, just no appointment, fill in a form, and as long as you meet a certain number of criteria on that form, you'll get a chest X-ray, which will then go back to your family doctor for him to interpret. And if there's something that's picked up on that, obviously you'll get to know about it. Now, chest X-rays aren't a silver bullet for lung cancer. They do miss things, but as a low cost first first step, they're the right thing to do. They're a lot lower cost than doing a CT, and they are going to spot 70 to 80% of lung cancers. Being able to do that and easy access to that sort of thing is I think it's an invaluable service. It's just a pilot at the moment. It just doesn't even operate across the whole of Greater Manchester, just certain areas of it. But it's been continued to be expanded. It's also there's other pilots running in Leeds, and I think there's possibly one starting in Leicester as well. So it's growing, and I think we're years away from this being a national program, but there's some really positive data coming out of it. And I think the really big positive for me is when they've looked at the pickup rates for lung cancer in through the self-referral route. The pickup rates are almost identical to the GP referred, family doctor referred routes. So that's a really positive thing. And they're also picking up a higher proportion of non-smoking lung cancers as well, which is also,
Major.
I think, a really positive thing, because there's right or wrong, well, not right or wrong, it's wrong. Some doctors don't want to send patients who aren't smokers for chest X-rays. They just seem to think that it's not, lung cancer isn't a risk. So being able to get around that is good news. And hopefully that's a pilot that continues to grow. And I'd like to think in a few years it'll be a national program.
Yeah. I mean, that seriously is major because so many younger people who don't meet the screening criteria are often denied, right? You're given countless antibiotics. They will tell you anything could be possibly wrong despite all the symptoms. So really being heard can be such a big issue. And this is your power to be heard right there. You think something is wrong. You can go in and insist on this x-rays. That's powerful. I really hope the results prove that something like this would be useful throughout the whole UK and potentially other countries. So
Yeah.
what an amazing project to get behind. So congratulations. And so tell me, what inspired you to get involved? Obviously your own diagnosis, like myself, that's what made me get into advocacy. For me, it's also a bit of my mental therapy, if I can put it that way, because I feel there's something really powerful. You feel so helpless when you're diagnosed, and the ability to get involved, to think about whether I'm informing, helping someone who's been diagnosed get a little piece of information, feel empowered to advocate for themselves or to further research. All of these things matter. So, what was the thing that made you want to get involved?
So I think it started as part of joining a support group, an online support group. I found after about six months of being the one who was asking questions, I was starting to turn into someone who was answering questions. And I've got a pretty good memory, and I tend to remember a lot. So I feel pretty good at answering the questions without having to go and look things up. I and I found I got a lot of pleasure out of it, and it made me feel good. And something when I was doing it out of work, it felt like it was giving me purpose, and that sort of drove me to think, well, what else can you do? You could because just answering questions in a in an online forum, that's great, that's helpful, but how do you get the message of the things you know and the experiences you have, how do you take that and get that to people who don't reach these online forums? Because there's a huge, huge number of cancer patients that never get to any of that kind of thing. And so that kind of led me to think, well, I want to be able to do some, you see I see other patient advocates working. I'm thinking, well, I think I can do some of this as well. And I had some false starts, went and did some things that I probably wasn't great at. But as I say, I found my niche. I found the things that I'm good at. It's for me, it's getting into the detail of programs on the ground and seeing how those can be improved and seeing how they can be made patient centric. Because the clinicians, bless them, they're brilliant experts at treating us, but they are not the experts at living with cancer. We're the experts at that, and we can teach them a lot. And so that's something we absolutely should do. And doing that gives me a lot of pleasure, and the more of it I can do, the better. So I do the work with Greater Manchester Cancer Alliance. I help a charity with guidance around driving and brain mets. And because I come from a background in information technology and I've always been interested in data, I also now do PPI work with the National Lung Cancer Audit, which collects all the statistics on lung cancer in the UK and presents that back to help clinicians make decisions about how to change treatment. So that is really interesting to work, and I'm actually stepping that up in the next few months beyond the lung cancer audit to cover what's known as NACCAM, which is the National Cancer Audit Collaboration Centre. So we're covering all the cancer types, and I've been going to be involved in the patient and public involvement forums for all of that. More interesting work to do there as well.
That's so powerful. And what a great use of your skills, because I think you can easily think, what can I do and how can I make a difference? And I do think sometimes what you talked about, you have to kiss a few frogs before you find out which one is right for you. And also going with the various groups. I think sometimes people think, oh, if I join one group, I can't help another. I think different groups are good at doing different things. And sometimes by aligning with different people, first, your exposure is so incredible who you wind up meeting in these circles. And you do start seeing, like you said, not everyone's in the support group. There's so many people out there who are living with cancer who just manage in a different way. So the ability to make an impact is brilliant. And so what else is next? And maybe also, have you partnered with other advocates? I know we have a friend in common who I think inspired us both, and we wanted to talk a little bit about him.
Sure, yeah. I've worked with a whole team of advocates in Greater Manchester. There's a whole team that we call it the Great Manchester Cancer Voices. So there's maybe 10 lung cancer advocates in that group there, and then there's 40 or 50 in total across all the different cancer types. So that's really great. And the same with the National Lung Cancer Audit as well. So don't work independently. I'm always as part of a group because my voice, I know I'm a middle-aged white man. I don't represent everyone. We need to hear lots of different voices. So that's important. But yeah, you mentioned a gentleman, Cameron Miller, who was one of the inspirations for me getting involved. He really he helped me right at the start of my cancer journey. And he said some magic words to me, which I'll never forget, which I pass on to almost everyone else who is newly diagnosed, um, because it's such a fantastic piece of advice. And he said to me, focus on what you can control. And I think that's such a wonderful little message that is so important to how you deal with cancer at the start of your treatment, because it's a whirlwind. I've said this before. And it's, you can't wrap your arms around all of it. You can't deal with the treatments, the diagnosis, and all that sort of. You have to leave that to your medical team. You can have some input into it if you're well engaged and understand this stuff. But even a clinician who had cancer has to trust his team to know what's right for him in terms of physically treating the disease. But there are things that you do have control over. You have control over how you manage your side effects. You have some degree of control over your own mental well-being. You have control over how you get one of the things I talked about, how you get your life in order post an incurable cancer diagnosis. Focus on those things, and you will feel better for doing it. And it was great advice. And if I ever had one message for all cancer patients at the start of the journey, it's that: focus on what you can control.
I love that. I love that. And I think those words always stay with you and they become, at least for me, sometimes mantras I have to repeat to myself.
Mm.
Right. And there's a few ones that I've heard is you're not a statistic. I like to read research. And
Yes.
sometimes you read something and like, oh my goodness, I have that thing that they're talking about. And it can be really, it can really throw you for a loop if you're not careful. And you do see it all the time, right? Just because you have those things doesn't mean you're going to have that pattern. So you're not a statistic. And the other powerful one I love is don't spend the good days waiting for the bad. And so I often hang on to those and think like these are the good days, right? We don't know what's
Yes.
ahead. It's right. And especially all of us, I was previously a big planner. It's hard sometimes not knowing the plan I was working for is not necessarily the same one.
Yeah. And you do, you can't stop planning ahead just because you've got this. I just booked a concert next June that someone I'm going to go and see.
Ooh.
And I just thought, why the hell not? I'll be all right. I'll be able to go. And if I'm not, my wife can sell the ticket.
I mean,
So it's things like that. You've got to really think, what the hey, I'll do it anyway, and things will pan out however they pan out. And
I think that it would be worse to not do things for fear that you wouldn't be there and then just have the time wasted, right? So that is really tricky. One thing I did want to come to is, in our first part of the episode, you did mention you had a smoking history, and
yeah,
that can be really polarizing a bit in our community. We know that ALK positive lung cancer is not necessarily associated or due to smoking, right? And so, but we do have a situation where people are getting diagnosed with these oncogene driven lung cancers that don't have a smoking history, and often they get delayed diagnosis. And then at the same time, we do know lung cancer is heavily stigmatized, right? Because of the smoking correlation. But we know that no matter how you get lung cancer, everyone deserves the best care, the best outcome. So do you have any thoughts in terms of balancing that? Did you feel some of the shame when you were diagnosed? Did you try and self-blame yourself? I mean, what was your own experience around that, if you don't mind?
yes, a little. A little. I mean, it's always in the back of your head that you had obviously you have the conversation with your oncologist, and because it's out positive, he said to me, "This wouldn't have been caused by smoking or secondhand smoke, even. That's not the cause. That's not where it's come from." But it doesn't stop you thinking I smoked all that time. You know, it's 20 years ago, but I did it. I've fun enough, I've been called a unicorn in a couple of times because I've always said no one has ever said to me when I've told them I have lung cancer, I didn't know you smoked, which is extremely rare
Yeah.
because almost every lung cancer patient has had that experience. You know, of just saying, yes, I have lung cancer, and someone saying, oh, I didn't know you smoked. It's not just a smoking disease. And even if it was, that's not a reason we should not treat people. Um, we, we, we treat people who drink too much. We treat people who eat too much. We treat people who do dangerous sports. Uh, you know, we treat people that live. This is the point. People go through, have lives, and there are things that will happen in their lives that cause them to get sick. And stigmatizing them for those things is awful. And it's particularly bad with lung cancer because it leads to all kinds of issues around funding for research. It kills so many more people than the other lung cancers, but it's so badly funded compared to some of the others. That's a real frustration. And I appreciate, you hear a lot of these messages from people saying this isn't just a smoker's disease. And it's not, but there's another part of this that says that doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. The important thing is it's a disease that is deeply unpleasant and kills a lot of people, and we should do what we can to treat it. And if part of that is persuading people to stop smoking, fine. But let's not stigmatize the people that have all the disease as a whole.
Yeah. No, thank you so much because I think that's really powerful. We do somehow need to create that awareness that you only need lungs, right? That's the big message so
Yeah.
many different groups try and push out. Is it breaking through? I don't know because we still see it every day where people aren't getting diagnosed or getting delayed diagnosis. But at the same time, by talking about it, it's not a desire to stigmatize anyone. It's just to make sure you are looking for it, right?
I've personally written to national newspapers because they've had a a story in their paper about the rise of lung cancer in young women, and the attached photo is a picture of a lady's lips with a cigarette in it.
Yeah,
I'm just
I
saying,
know. Yeah.
you're just stereotyping. You need to stop doing that. So, yeah, it's a huge frustration, and um, I think it's going to take a while for it to go away, but the fact that non-smoking lung cancer is increasing, the message is going to have to get through at some point that this disease is not going to go away when there's nobody left smoking. So we need to figure out how to treat it and hopefully cure it now, not not then.
What a brilliant message, and what a brilliant message to end on. I think exactly right. I mean, we need to keep pushing the science forward, and like you said, we got rid of all smoking today. It wouldn't go away, so that's really powerful. We still will need the research. We still need to improve the outcomes. Thank you, Duncan. It's been brilliant speaking with you. We will stay in touch and continue hearing what comes next for you.
Been a pleasure, Yvonne. Thank you very much.
Thank you.